And I'm walking into the room, going to go tell them, and I know what's coming. I was like, I'm their only child. I'm like the apple of their eye. Like they've given me everything in life. I needed to succeed, and I pretty much destroyed it. Like hell is about to break loose.
Thanks for joining me on the Kingdom Unleashed channel. Part of our mission is to reveal to you the reality of God. Through this interview today, you will discover that God is real and still moving mightily as he did in Bible days. I'm interviewing Gabriel Strydom, a man whom God is using powerfully. He shares how God miraculously saved him out of drugs and rugby and the things of this world into a life of ministry with visions, dreams, miracles, and just crazy stuff happening. Bottom line, God is real. Enjoy his story of God showing up to rock his world. Might stir your faith. Okay, guys, welcome to Fivefold Ministry Academy, and we're gonna grow together with Gabriel Strydom. So, Gabriel, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much, André. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So, Gabriel's the leader of Fire and Fragrance Ministries in South Africa, and he's been in more than 40 countries and really impacting so many lives. Just so excited for this interview.
Same.
And we had a really good chat. Guys, you're going to love this. And we're going to just unpack a bit of his journey and his story, and it's really going to stir you. Ultimately, we want to get to how do we impact lives for Christ. That's where we want to get to. Okay, so Gabriel.
Yes.
So give us a bit of the backstory. You grew up in the church, but it seems like you lost your way somewhere there. So give us a bit of the story.
So thanks for having me. This is so exciting. Excited to talk about just Jesus and what he's doing across the earth. Grew up in a phenomenal Christian home, Potch. I'm a Potchy. And I think that I don't know about a time in my life, honestly, where I didn't know that God existed, that I didn't know that it doesn't speak to us. I remember being like 9 years old, and I would have dreams, and my parents would ask me, so do you feel Jesus saying anything to you? Like, do you feel he's speaking to you? My story, a lot of times parents will ask me, so where did you lose it? I always tell them, hey, I chose to walk away from the Lord. So my story is one of like, I had such good examples. I remember I would be a young boy, and my dad would, I would wake up in the mornings early, and I would see my dad in his study spending time with the Lord, like my mom was spending time with the Lord. They're not a ministry, they just love Jesus. I remember at 11 years old, I went to a conference with my father, and at this conference, there was a man by the name of Don Francisco. I don't know if you've ever heard of Don Francisco. Right, it's like an American country Christian singer. And,
Yes.
And I had a profound encounter with God. 11 years old, and I'm with my dad in this car, and we're driving back from Klerksdorp to Potch, where this event was. And I'm weeping in the car as a young boy, crying. And my dad pulls the car off, and he's like, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? And I remember I said this phrase to my dad. I said to my dad, if this is what heaven feels like, why do I want to keep living now?
Sure.
Like if this is heaven, if this is what it feels like to be in God's presence, why would I want to keep living? I remember in that moment as an 11-year-old, I got deeply marked, like for God's presence. I knew I could hear his voice from then. Like I knew things. And it was strange. And I think because I grew up in such a Christian family, I had good examples. It was just very normal to me. Fast forward a year later, one of my friend's brothers introduced us to some adult stuff, and like for some reason, if people ask me what's the biggest mistake in my life, I would say this was the biggest mistake in my life ever. I didn't tell my parents, right? And I remember, I will never forget that. I was like 12 years old. My parents were sitting with me in the parking lot at the Mooirevier Mall, and they're like, something is wrong, son. Just tell us, like you can tell us anything in the world. And for some reason, I kept it, and that shame kind of grew in my heart. Loved Jesus, experienced him, had the shame of this thing I don't know what to do with. And that same year, my grandfather, who I'm named after, had a profound encounter. I was playing cricket for the Potch team, did really well. And he had an open vision. In this vision, God showed him a picture of my life. And he said, I will bless Gabriel in sports. I will give him great opportunities. But he's called to be in ministry, and you will be the sign one day. Wow. That he will be in ministry. Wow. And God told him, you're not allowed to tell anybody until he comes to you. Right? And so, long story short, I kind of go on living in this in-between struggle, right? Like in the one half, I've encountered God, I know Him. And the other half, I'm living in shame, and I have this like sin that's stirring on the other side that I don't know what to do with. So age 15, I started dating a girl. And always when I tell a story, I tell people I was walking in Pick and Pay, and this voice told me, don't do it. And I didn't listen to the voice. And probably one of the biggest, I would say, points of rebellion in my heart. So I knew God spoke to me as a 15-year-old, and I just turned in. Long story short, we had a very, very bad relationship for the next 6 years, right? And so did great in sports, played Grand Coma Week, was Grand Coma Week captain, SA Top 40 with rugby, played AFL, Aussie Rules for South Africa, went to Australia when I was 15 and 16, went to national championship stuff with athletics, did really well, but all of that doing good in sport produced a ton of pride in my heart. And so age 19, got my first professional rugby contract, made a lot of money, got really prideful. And I just started compromising more and more, like this underpinning of shame, and just became more and more things that sin built on. And then on the other side, I still went to church every weekend. I tried to love God. I wanted to, but I wanted this more to some extent. And our culture is so Christian, it's easy to some extent to be a hypocrite. People don't really ask you very straightforward questions on character and holiness. So I was playing professional rugby for about 3 years, and played the best game of my life against Ducks. My agent called me. He's like, "This is amazing. If you play like this, like Super Rugby is easy around the corner. Just keep going."
What position did you play?
I played flank. I weighed about 112 kilograms. I had like 6% body fat. I think my max bench was 200. Back squat 340. Like I was an athlete. It's my body was my job, right? And the next day in practice, we kind of play a little bit of touch, and I slip and I dislocate my knee. And I remember I was sitting in my house where I was living, and my parents came, and they were like, "Can we please pray for you? Let's pray that God will heal you." And I remember I told my parents, "Don't pray for me. God doesn't exist." Right? Sure. And it's kind of funny.
Were you angry?
I was angry. This is the funny part. I was angry at God that my job was to run into people. Like the most irrational anger, right? But it's the idolatry of self, right? My prestige, my success. If God doesn't bless me, He's not worthy to be worshipped, right? Which is the epitome of pride. So long story short, called one of my friends, a drug dealer, brought me a joint, smoked a joint. Next day, did cocaine the first time. Day after that, did LSD the first time. And kind of just, everything just kind of spiraled. I would say that
what flowed out of that anger.
Yes. God. Well, so what I think happened was the idol in my life was the sport thing, okay? And what drove performance was like the shame that I've tasted God, and something is missing. I just want to prove that I'm not, right? And so when I said God does not exist, when I threw off the boundary lines, everything just went crazy. I always tell people, people sometimes make the statement, somebody has an addictive personality. I was like, I don't really believe in that. I think God makes people with great appetite, right? And He made me with a great appetite. And so that appetite that was given to sports and getting excellent in sports now turned to drugs. And got very addicted to drugs. Over the next 6 months, lost about 15 kilograms. One night, on my then girlfriend, just now my wife's 21st birthday, I overdosed on cocaine. Did about twice the amount of cocaine you need to die. So if I cut it in half, you had a half, I had a half, we both should have died. Sure. And I'm laying in bed and I'm like shaking, and I have this internal conversation. I was like, I'm gonna die. And I go like, I don't want to die as a drug addict. That sucks. I was like, no, I can die as a drug addict. This is horrible. And I said, well, I need to go to my parents. I was like, well, if I go to my parents, I'm an only child, so I've learned how to kind of wrestle things out of my head by myself. And I was like, if I go to my parents, they're going to send me to rehab. my life is over. I said, well, I'd rather go out fighting than go as a drug addict. So I went to the kitchen, smoked another joint, got in the car, drove to their house, broke into their home, South Africa, right? Everything is locked. And I'm walking down to their room, and my mom was about this tall, right? So I'm 192 centimeters. My mother fits me. She's a short lady, but she has short, spiky red hair, right? Like everybody knows exactly the type of person I'm talking about, right? She is high up in the Department of Education. She works with a lot of leaders and people. Very, very strict, right is right, wrong, wrong person. And I'm walking into their room, going to go tell them, and I know what's coming. I was like, I'm their only child. I'm like the apple of their eye. Like they've given me everything in life I needed to succeed, and I pretty much destroyed it. Like hell is about to break loose. And I remember I woke my mom up, and I'm like, hey, Mom, I have a problem. I can't stop doing drugs. And I remember my mom just jumped up, and she like jumped and just hugged me. And she held me, and she says, I love you, don't worry, you're gonna make it. I love you, like, don't worry, you're gonna make it. I remember I just broke down weeping. I just like, my mother legitimately, she was like Jesus to me. Like she gave me mercy I did not deserve.
Yeah, beautiful.
Right, like I was a professional athlete, so I'm used to critique. I was not used to unconditional love. Like a love that just, in your mess, we love you. And my dad got up, and me and my dad are super close, like, he's like he's my best friend. And my dad asked me if I want to quit, and I told him yes. And he says, okay, if you want to quit, you need Jesus. And my dad has big hands, like he was in the military for 20 years. He puts like his paw on my chest, and he prays like the wildest, like Papa Bear prayer, leads me to God in his room, right? Like powerful moment.
Sure.
2 weeks later, shared the gospel first time at high school. At a boys' residence, 40 boys give their lives to Jesus. First time I cast a demon out of a guy, healing happens. First time, like it was just,
So you just went for
just like it was wild. Like literally got saved. Directly after my dad prayed, I threw up blood for like 20 minutes. No idea what happened. Right after that, had no withdrawal.
Sure.
Right, so
Wow.
bit of deliverance happening there. And I remember this thought came to me. Didn't know it was God then. Definitely was God. Go ask your grandfather you're called for ministry.
Go ask.
Ask your grandfather you're called to ministry. So my grandparents live in the same yard as us. Walk over to the house. Like 7 a.m. Say, hey, Opa. Like, and he's like, oh, like you got saved last night. And I was like, yes, how do you know? He's like, well, it's the first time in 7 years God didn't wake me up to pray for you. You must be saved.
Wow.
And I sat down, my grandfather told me, sat down, it was like this little like ornament chair, took out a big thing of oil, threw it over my head, laid hands on me. And he just prayed like this wild prayer. It's like, said that, Lord, I pray that you'll give Gabriel the mantle you gave my life to finish the work I could not finish. And prayed this wild prayer. Now, afterwards, I heard he was in a massive AFM revival in the 1960s. Like wild stuff happened. Turned away from that. Then was the reason that the first ever non-whites in South Africa went to university because of an encounter he had with God. He met with like in apartheid with like wild people, all because God said, like, you need to go meet with these leaders. Then he was the first person that advocated to train 80,000 mine workers in maths and English to educate them because God told him South Africa will change. If you don't educate people, like the country will be in trouble. And so it was just a wild time. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, that was crazy. In the moment, I was just like, it's another Tuesday. Right? I wasn't sure it's happening. I could feel something changed. And I think that in the midst of all that, I think that something happened in me. I can't really explain it. And if people ask me, well, what happened in that moment, I tell them, every other time I've responded to altar calls. Like I've responded by that time in my life, right? We're South Africans. I've responded to 17,000 calls for fire insurance. Right? I just didn't want to go to hell, right? But I never understood Romans 10 where it says, if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. I never understood lordship. I remember so many times I would say yes to altar calls. And it was like, oh yeah, but this, and like, oh yeah, but I'll do one more time, I'll text her, and da-da-da-da-da. And that was the first time ever I was like, God, I've ruined every good thing you've given me. just take my life. You can have it, whatever you want. And
Full surrender.
Full surrender. And it wasn't like, it was weird to explain it. It was like, I tell people the moment that happened, it felt like I've always been like this train that has like this engine that's made to drive. And my whole life I've been standing on sand. And that moment I put on tracks and boom, it's like something moved into action.
How old were you then?
22. It's a decade ago this year. And a week and a half later, I led my girlfriend to Jesus. She's not my wife. Best friend to Jesus.
So the same girl you dated?
Yes. Right. Both got saved.
Wow.
Got filled with the Holy Spirit together. Baptized in water together. When, after we got saved, dated for 2.5 years before we got married, said we will not kiss again until the day we get married. Didn't kiss for 2.5 years. Said God has called us to purity. We will live a pure and holy life.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
And it was just a phenomenal season. I think 30 or 40 of our friends got saved. Out of those, people 11 are now on our staff. We saved for like friends for a decade, seeing people get saved, get married, get kids. It's been the best choice. God has been so faithful. I could not have imagined. Like a month later, I called my agent, quit playing rugby. And it was not, like I remember it was Curry Cup off season or pre-season. And we were training and I was sitting next to the field putting on my boots. And this thought came to my mind, why is 30 men running after a ball? And I was like, that thought has never crossed my mind. This must be God, right? And I literally got up, went home, told my dad, and this was profound. This is why I say I have phenomenal parents. I told my dad, hey dad, I think I'm going to quit. And remember, if you're an only child, pro athlete, your parents do it with you pretty much, right? They're like in it with you. And my dad looked at me and he says, here, take my phone call. And I remember in that moment, it was like my father released me to give up something they've dreamt with me for like years. And I remember I made the phone call, I quit. And I would not have called myself charismatic. Right now, I would totally call myself charismatic, but then I didn't know what it means. I remember I drove in my car and I just started laughing hysterically. It's like the joy of the Lord hit me. I laughed so much I had to pull off the side of the road. And it literally felt like a mountain lifted off me. It felt like I had deliverance or something. This idol that was in my life since I was 12 years old, this thing just lifted off me.
That idol died.
And joy was the reward. Right. Now, of course, I wouldn't say it wasn't hard when tons of my friends started playing Super Rugby and all that stuff. Of course, there was like, you have to work through insecurities. But life entered into me in a way I couldn't explain it. And that's how I met Jesus.
Sounds like God. Sounds like God. Sure, I mean, and that encounter with God, I mean, that set you up to live fully for Him. So, so let's take the rest of the story. You know, so I mean, the leader of Fire and Fragrance in South Africa now. So take us on that journey. What happened in terms of setting things up for
ministry in that way? So
ministry,
I was at a camp about 3 months later, and I felt the Lord told me to fast for 5 days before the camp. I've never fasted before, right? And I did a fast, and there was a guy that came and taught on the Holy Spirit. Stefan Ihu, right? Very anointed.
Oh, he's in YWAM.
Yes, very anointed man. One of our friends' almost dad got touched by God because of his ministry as well, and et cetera, et cetera. So he came to this camp and he laid hands on me, and it literally felt like a fire hydrant opened up inside of me. It's like I thought I was going to die. Like it felt like something entered into me in a way that I can't explain to people. Now, I've never fallen in the Spirit, anything like that. Never happened to me before. But in that moment when he laid hands on me, I felt God said, hey, do not gauge how we are doing by how other people are responding in the room. I've made you to function in this environment. No idea what it meant. Like no idea what it meant. So long story short, all of a sudden, like the Holy Spirit starts breaking out in camp. People are falling everywhere, and I'm not falling. But I have deep sense of peace, like deep sense of God's nearness. And Stefan, for some reason, looks at me and he recognizes something and he lines up everybody at the camp. He says, hey, Gabe, God is on you. You pray for people. And I look at him and I say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, okay, like, let's go. Like, it's just like, I'm so new, right? And as I'm walking to the first person, this voice tells me, don't touch them. They're going to think you're pushing them over. And I did it. So I went and it was like everybody's like out. I'm
Without touching him.
not out touching anybody. I was like, what the heck happened? I was like, what? I was so freaked out, right? It was like, not like, oh yes, I'm the man of God. It was like, no. I am an ex-drug addict whose nose still bleeds every morning because of the amount of cocaine I snorted. What's happening to me, right? But I just feel nearness. I feel God being with me. And then the next Monday is a funny story. I love this. Next Monday, I go to back to the book, to the university I studied, and I'm going to class. And then one of my friends asked me this question. He said, what do you do this weekend? It's like, I was at this camp and things happen when we pray. And he's like, what happens? I was like, well, God moves. He's like, whatever, pray for me, show me. And I was like dead serious to this guy. His name is Wian. I said, Wian, I don't want to humiliate you in the student syndrome. Like, let's find a place and I'll pray for you, right? And he's like, okay, so he gets 3 buddies. The only place you can get is like one of the female residences clubhouse, like a bar. So we go into this bar. They line up, pray for the first guy, boom. Pray for the second guy, boom. Pray for the third guy. He's like, stop. He's like, I'm going to try not fall. And so he literally stands like a tackle and he falls forward, boom.
Yeah.
All right. All 3 of them give their lives to Jesus, baptize them in my parents' pool with my wife now and one of our other friends that now leads our whole prayer ministry. And then I started recognizing, okay, here's something interesting. I don't know what to do with it. I don't necessarily know how to theologically debate everything then. I just knew that I have tons of friends that used to do drugs with me. And when they get up from the floor, they don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right.
What I also like about your story is traditionally you would think this guy should now sit in classes for the next 5 years before he prays for anyone. And here you are stepping out, moving, and lives are being rocked.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think it's part of a key is to give your life to Jesus and start doing ministry.
Exactly.
Don't hold back.
No. And I think that's, again, so thankful for my parents, right? Thankful for the church I grew up in. They championed me immediately. Go like, hey, yeah, pray for people. I talk to them about Jesus, go for it.
Yeah, awesome.
And then I did my DTS in the States, right, which is discipleship training school. Felt to go do it. I think it was honestly God that had me leave South Africa.
So it's why went
yes,
in the US?
Yeah, in the US, did a discipleship training school there. And I think it was necessary, right? There's a lot of our culture, especially Afrikaans culture, that's like tall poppy. Like there's a way that we treat young leaders sometimes in our culture can be toxic. And I felt like I had to be, and the American culture is so championing. Anything is possible. Like you can do whatever you want to do. Like if you're a Christian, you love God, you're going to change the world. Like that can do anything mentality. I think God had to send me to America for 4 years to break out like a cynicalness out of my life for what God is doing now. No young person wants to be a part of a cynical movement. Right? If you want to see youth movements across the earth erupt, we need to champion young people. Tell them the 10,000 hoops they have to jump through. And anyway, so did that, went to the ministry school to skip a ton because there's a lot in this, but I had a dream, yay, more than a dream. I don't know how to explain what it was really. And where I was standing in a nation and I getting deported and a voice tells me, hey, you're going to get deported from this nation. But go tell Rachel, she's a part of my outreach team, to tell the rest of the team everything will be okay. And I was like, and I woke up from this thing and I was like, cool. So I went to her the next morning and said, hey, I had this weird thing. Again, I'm saved so short and I've never seen anything like this modeled. So I wasn't like, we all have this, right? It's another Tuesday. And so long story short, fast forward about 2 months. Wait, let me share the story. I went to a month later, I went to Bethel the first time. And there was a prayer time. And I got so touched. I felt something of God's nearness I've never experienced. And I remember like my friends wanted to go home and I went to the prayer time like 6 times. It's like, no, I want to go back. They're like, oh, we're going to drive. I was like, I'll walk home. I don't care.
You want more?
I want more. Like whatever I can get, I want it. I remember we went back to go on outreach. And on my way back, I said to God, I'll do whatever I need to do to get more of you. Like this is not hype. There's tangibly, you are close here. I can't explain, you're close. And I think then
So you had a deep hunger.
it was a hunger, but I didn't care about like, I think like I was so short in it. And I came from, people told me you want to be a pro athlete and you want to be big and strong and fast. And I got all those things and I was empty. And then Jesus touched me once and I was like, I'm full. And I've never stopped being full.
Yeah,
It's close.
This is it. What you want.
This is what I want. It's like I will never get to the end of it. I want this. I'll do whatever I need to do, right? And this hunger, this thing in me, just it went. And so, long story short, fast forward, I go to a different nation in the Middle East. Go then to another nation. I'm stepping into the line to go in. I get deported, like the dream said. Right? I yelled to Rachel, that's already on. I said, hey, tell them everything's going to be fine. She goes like, goodness, 3 months ago, he told me this is going to happen. I'm on an airplane back to Istanbul, Turkey. Head is on the window. I said, Lord, what is happening? He said, well, when you said you'll do anything, right? He said, now is that time. And here's the question he asked, will you come with me? I said, Lord, I'll go wherever. He said, well, and I had then kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It's like kind of like a download. And in this moment, I felt God said, I want you to go strengthen my Syrian bride. Go to this city, Gaziantep, go meet this man and go strengthen my bride. So stop.
In Istanbul.
Right, yeah. So I landed in Istanbul, flew to a city called Gaziantep, which is in the eastern border between Syria and Turkey. Met the man by the name of Amaj in a falafel shop.
Did you get a prophetic download to go and meet this guy? Or did you know him?
Well, so I met the guy before. I didn't have any way to contact him.
Okay.
So I walked literally, I honestly think the Holy Spirit led me, 21 kilometers to where I thought I remembered where the place was where we met him. And met him, he came, he said, okay, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm back, here's the moment. He said, oh, can you teach my church tomorrow? Long story short, went to his church, had a profound meeting, like saw a guy with a withered hand get completely healed, saw a deaf guy get healed, like, I remember after the meeting, tons of people got healed. I've never seen anything like that. Never seen it since that intensely as well. Literally, I ran out of the room because I was afraid they're going to ask me to do it again. It's like, you cannot make this up. Like, there's no E minor. Like, there's no special moments. It was like God broke in the room. The people in the room were all Syrian underground church leaders. A week later, I feel God say, go with me then to Syria. Sneak into Syria. I'd get chased by Turkish border patrol, sneak through a minefield. And I would say that moment there, I met the nearness of God in impossibility in a way that I can't explain. And I would say that moment, if you ask me what's catalyzed ministry, what I'm doing now, was when that disruptive voice of God broke in and said, hey, will you come with me?
Disruptive voice of God. I like that. That is a profound statement.
And he wasn't asking me to build a ministry. He was asking me if I'll come with him, because he's building a ministry. And I think, like, if you would ask me, like, what is a great driver for me, it's at the end of Matthew 28, where it says, and I will be with you to the end of the age. So in my story and where I went to ministry now, I would say, like, that phrase, I'll be with you and come with me, has been the deciding factor of how we've done everything in ministry till now.
Sure. That's really profound, because we normally focus on go build something. I love that. No, just come with me, just follow me, and he's going to do it. I think that is a key for anything anyone is called to do in life. That is profound. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you very much.
So Gabriel's story stirs one's faith. This reveals the power of a testimony. A testimony unlocks your faith and invites you into experiencing the same miracles of God in your life. This is why it's so important to share testimonies of miracles and to steward these well. In the next session, we'll continue interviewing Gabriel about the disruptive voice of God. And if you enjoy this content, like it, subscribe, and share with somebody. Okay, thanks. See you in the next one.